Today was a big day at Mrs. Puff's boating school. It was the day of the final road test. Mrs. Puff was getting ready for the final student of the day, but her smile quickly turned into a frown when she saw who her last student was. Okay, Mrs. Puff, I'm ready to finally pass the driving test. I highly doubt it, but okay, let's get this over with. And as usual, SpongeBob ended up failing his test miserably. Okay, how did I do, Mrs. Puff? You failed again, SpongeBob. See you again next year. Oh, I failed again. Well, maybe next time. As SpongeBob was walking home from the school, he heard a noise. SpongeBob looked over to where the noise was coming from. The noise seems to be coming from those bushes. SpongeBob peeked behind the bushes, and he couldn't believe his eyes. Behind the bushes was an old car. Is that a 1958 Plymouth Fury? I've only seen those cars on TV. It sure is, Sonny, said a voice. SpongeBob looked over to see Old Man Jenkins standing in front of him. Her name is Christine. Ain't she a beauty? Only the most beautiful car I've ever seen. You can have her if you want. Wait, really? Yeah, I got no use for her. I was planning on selling her anyway. But I tell you what, since you're a good friend of mine, you can have her for free. This made SpongeBob very excited. Thank you so much, Old Man Jenkins. May I step inside her? Of course, go right ahead. SpongeBob immediately jumped in Christine and fell in love. Before you go, I probably should mention her past. But before Old Man Jenkins could say anything, SpongeBob already drove off. Youngins, they never listen to old folk. SpongeBob was driving Christine around town and he was having the time of his life. The car also attracted a lot of attention. At a red light, one of the Bikini Bottomites decided to confront SpongeBob. Excuse me, sir, is that a 1958 Plymouth Fury? It sure is. Her name is Christine. Another Bikini Bottomite pulled alongside him. Dude, you're like the coolest guy in town now. Oh, well, I wouldn't say that. SpongeBob was enjoying the praise so much that he decided to keep Christine. A little later, SpongeBob was showing Christine off to Patrick, Sandy, and Squidward. Whoa, SpongeBob, I have to say, that's a nice ride. I agree with Patrick. Where'd you get it? I must say, SpongeBob, for a moron, that's pretty impressive. I got her from Old Man Jenkins. She was in really good shape, too. Mr. Krabs was also there, but he was a bit skeptical. How much did you pay for her, boyo? Oh, I didn't pay anything, Mr. Krabs. I got her for free. Mr. Krabs' skepticism turned into joy. A free car? I'm gonna go see if Old Man Jenkins could get me a free car. And he quickly rushed away. Do you mind taking us for a ride, SpongeBob? Sure, hop in. And after a smooth ride on Christine, Patrick and Sandy were very impressed. Squidward was too, though he was too stubborn to admit it. Later that night, SpongeBob was watching TV when there was a knock on the door. SpongeBob answered the door and was surprised to see Mrs. Puff. How did you do it, SpongeBob? Do what, Mrs. Puff? SpongeBob was confused. Your test. How did you pass your test? Oh, I didn't pass. I just got this car from Old Man Jenkins. You mean you're operating that thing without a license? Don't worry, Mrs. Puff. I was driving smoothly. SpongeBob, I don't care how smoothly you were driving that thing. It's against the law to operate a vehicle without a driver's license. I'm sorry, SpongeBob, but I'm gonna have to confiscate the car from you. SpongeBob begged Mrs. Puff not to take Christine away, but she wouldn't budge. I'm sorry, SpongeBob, but rules are rules, and she drove the car away. SpongeBob was now sad because the car was taken away from him, and the sadness kept him awake later that night. Meanwhile, at the boating school, Mrs. Puff was finishing up her paperwork before she went home, when she heard the noise of a starting car. Hello? Is anyone there? But there was no reply, forcing Mrs. Puff to go out and investigate. She was very surprised when she saw Christine was operating. SpongeBob? Is that you? No response. SpongeBob, I understand that you're mad, but I only did this to protect you and the town of Bikini Bottom. Still nothing. Suddenly, Christine's lights came on. Then she began to move, slow at first, but she sped up over time. SpongeBob, you're scaring me. What are you doing? Still no response as the car was rushing towards her. Mrs. Puff quickly jumped out of the way to dodge the car. Then she began to run in terror, and Christine raced after her. The car caught up with Mrs. Puff, and before she knew it, she was on the hood of Christine. Mrs. Puff quickly hopped in the car and realized there was nobody in it. That car has a mind of its own. Mrs. Puff desperately tried to stop Christine, but it was no use. Christine then crashed into the lighthouse, sending Mrs. Puff flying. Mrs. Puff was knocked unconscious from the impact. Then Christine drove away. At around 4 in the morning, SpongeBob went downstairs to get a glass of water. When he heard a car pull in SpongeBob's driveway, he opened the door and was surprised to see Christine there. What are you doing back here? He thought to himself. But his confusion quickly turned into happiness. He was just glad to have his car back. A few days pass, and SpongeBob continued driving Christine. And at first, everything was fine. But as the days turned into weeks, things began to change. SpongeBob's personality was beginning to change for the worse. He became arrogant, self-centered, and full of himself. Patrick and Sandy noticed this and were worried for their friend. SpongeBob, are you all right? Yes, SpongeBob, ever since you got Christine, you've been acting very different. Oh, my dear friends, you're just jealous that you don't have a car as fine as mine. We're not jealous. We're just worried about you, that's all. Sandra, I'm perfectly fine, so you can run along and play or whatever you're doing. But don't judge me. This is my car. SpongeBob, I don't like this new you. I'm leaving. Well, fine then, Mr. Star. Leave, I don't care. You know what? Fine, I will. And Patrick jumped out of the car. Would you like to join him, Sandra? I ain't leaving this car until you tell me why you're acting so strange. I do not like this tone of voice, Miss Cheeks. Their arguing was interrupted by a siren. Hey, buddy, do you have any idea how fast you were going? What's it to you, officer? I'm gonna need proof of license and registration. I don't need one because I'm too cool. Yeah, I'm not buying it. You're coming with me, sir. And he grabbed SpongeBob. You take your hand off me. Now, bub. Enraged, SpongeBob grabbed the police officer and pinned him to the wall. Then he proceeded to attack the cop. Sandy tried to stop him, but SpongeBob swung at her. Then SpongeBob froze. He looked at his hands and his anger quickly turned into fear. But before anyone could say anything, SpongeBob jumped in Christine and drove off. Sandy, who was still worried about her friend, quickly followed him. SpongeBob isolated himself in a cave not far from town. SpongeBob had realized what he had done, and he was now sad. What have I done? I just drove all my friends away, and I just punched Sandy. I haven't felt this guilty about myself since... Then SpongeBob realized something. You! SpongeBob angrily pointed at Christine. Ever since you came along, you completely changed my lifestyle. You drove Patrick away, you made me attack Sandy, you ruined my life, Christine. My life was perfect until you came along. Christine's lights came on. She did not like SpongeBob talking to her like that. You just want me all to yourself. Well, you're not gonna get away with it. I don't care what it takes. Only one of us gets out of this cave alive. This made Christine very angry, and she began to charge at SpongeBob. SpongeBob quickly dodged the attack. SpongeBob quickly jumped into Christine and tried to stop her, but the car was too powerful. Christine managed to corner SpongeBob and was about to finish him off. Then a giant crane crashed into the cave. Inside the crane was Mrs. Puff. SpongeBob, that car is alive and needs to be destroyed as soon as possible. Get out of here now. I'll hold him off. SpongeBob quickly rushed out of the cave. He ran into Sandy and explained everything. Your car was evil and had a mind of its own this whole time? That's right, and we need to destroy her before she causes any more trouble. SpongeBob and Sandy quickly rushed back to the cave. At this point, Christine had managed to overwhelm Mrs. Puff. As the car was about to finish her off, she heard a voice. Hey, Christine, said a voice. Christine flipped her mirrors over to SpongeBob. Leave my friends alone. And SpongeBob took an electric cord and shoved it in her exhaust pipe. Then he threw a grenade inside of her. Christine was in horrible pain as he was being electrocuted. It also caused her to burst into flames and eventually explode. SpongeBob watched in sadness as Christine burst into smithereens. Sandy went over to comfort SpongeBob and told him it was okay and that she forgave him. Then SpongeBob walked over to Mrs. Puff. Mrs. Puff, I'm sorry I didn't listen to you. For once, SpongeBob, it wasn't your fault. Besides, how did we know that that car was going to be alive? I'm just glad that everything's back to normal. Not quite, Sandy. There's one more thing that I have to do first. And SpongeBob walked sadly towards Patrick's house.